we get people to talk to each other about their practice. That is what Brandon was talking about, the intellectual community. Now, why, in all my years in early childhood, is this notion, because they're little, so too is our thinking ability as adults with little children, is just demeaning. But we're in the know right now. We are vogue, fashion. We are the ones people are looking to, early childhood educators, because of all the research in neuroscience. And they realize this is the level that is, we better know what we're doing with these young children. So you actually have more of a voice than we've ever had before, and it's really our obligation to use it. In fact, it's actually going to utero to 3 now, all the research is on. So what we have to be careful is it doesn't become the kindergarten, first, second, and third grade now that they have all this neuroscience. So this is a sideline of beliefs. So how do we think about setting the table and bringing people together? That's really what we're focused on at this moment in time. To start, and I cannot emphasize this enough, is the importance of listening. How do you listen? Why do you listen? What are you listening for? When do you listen? Really, as leader, the majority of your time should be, really shouldn't be talking, should be listening. So it's a complex thought when you think, well, wait, I've got to share out and implement and mobilize and inspire. You do. You have to do all that. A large part of your responsibility, though, is to listen so carefully, because that informs your next step, your next word choice.
And that's so hard.
It's so hard. It's so hard. So we're going to practice right now. Listen. And I'm just going to say on the front end, you're going to decide yourselves that how much you want to mix up your engagement today, because we're going to do a fair amount of partnering and practicing of different things. If you feel it's of great value, stay with the partner here from your own site. That's your choice. If you feel like you want to mix it up a little bit and have a different point of view, do so. Okay. So right now, this is going to be an active listening exercise. And these chairs can move. You can say, create a little more space between pairs if you want. Take time if you want to decide with whom you will be doing this. It isn't more than 10 minutes total. Okay, just take a minute. You good with where you are? People want to change. You're not going to hurt anyone's feelings if you change. Do this for your insight. You ready to change? Anyone want to move around a little bit? And Brandon, will you be able? You have time? Okay.
Or we can just absorb the third person.
I really want everybody to be engaged, if possible. And Brian is willing to be a partner.
I'll go with Brandon.
Great. Okay.
Well, Cindy needs somebody.
Oh, well, we were considering.
Oh, split.
Oh, all
I
right.
mean, we'll
So-
split. We'll split. We'll split.
You're gonna, yeah, we'll split.
Okay, so quickly change seats.
Oh, the line. Yeah.
One of you.
Okay.
Got it.
Just wait it.
Okay, here's how it's going to work. You're going to be engaged in your partner pairing space. You are going to trade roles for the first 3 minutes. Well, first identify who's listener, who's storyteller. And for the first 3 minutes, the storyteller is going to share out a story. It could be literally your trip to work, to the workshop today. Or it could be a story about a family member, or it could be anything you want to share for 3 minutes. Content's really not that relevant. So don't get hung up on that. So in 3 minutes, storyteller, you're going to share your story to the listener. The listener is going to be as passive as possible. There are no gestures. There is no verbal exchange. You're listening. hear the chime, shh, 1 minute. When you hear the chime, that means listener is going to repeat the story exactly how they heard. Exactly how they heard. Okay? That's how you're listening. No notes. Then you'll hear the chime, and that will mean switch roles and repeat the same process. Everybody good? Why are you dreading this? Body language. All right, I'm going to do the chime. Storytellers, have you been identified? Storyteller, everybody identified? Storyteller will take a minute. That's your story. Okay. Really, literally, I woke up, I decided to put on this dress, and I hit the subway.
Well,
and
we love.
Not me, you are something about this. All right. Ready? Here we go.
So I want to go back. I was in the airport get on the plane, get off the plane, get to New York City, and then we're shut off the regular car.
Lots of good food.
Really not the guys like trying to shove it in, I'm like, put it in the back seat, I guess. Like, he's like, no, I can get it. It's right next to it. So much trying to shove
Like that.
I'm like, just put it in the back seat, I'll sit in the back seat. And he's like, no, that's not gonna be comfortable for the ride. Well, like, I want to get going. I'm tired and I don't want to. So finally, let's put in the back seat. We're driving. Get home. After I get home, I put it in my closet. It doesn't fit anywhere. It's just sitting in my room. And where it's really nice thing that my parents decided to buy me suitcases. So this past weekend, I brought it with me and stuff. Like, we just closed for like 2 days, and I left it at their house. I set up one of theirs, and the suitcase is back with me. I'm going to London, and I did
I did.
like grab it or travel to yeah, acknowledge that
That was actually 2.5 because I didn't want to stretch your mind too much. Okay, 2.5. Now, listener, retell exactly what you heard.
it didn't, and then you just write, and it didn't, but I am the name. You got it. Great,
You missed like a few details, but like, no, at the airport I was concerned that it wouldn't fit, and I was confused why it wasn't fit because it was set up at the airport. I didn't know that it would have been hard.
You know,
Alright, so valid. You did good. You did good, girl.
So that was the equal amount of time that the storyteller used. Okay, switch roles. Listener becomes storyteller, storyteller becomes listener. Ready? No response. Listener, take the next 2.5 minutes to retell what the storyteller said. Verbatim.
So on Monday night, this event happened before the house. And she didn't feel like she got anything dressed, she was so you decided to run them. And you found this whole dress that was like 70 bucks, but you figured because it was so much unloaded damage. Yes, so you decided to go to something. And then you get to the event, and it was great. Loved her first. It was there, we spent all night chatting with people. We were chatting, having a great time. At the end, and normally you wouldn't react. But since we're friends today, you're a little nervous about it, so you're scraping, and your friend felt really bad about it. She said she was going and at the end of the night, she was going to do just and now I'm back. Nothing's working. She was on the upper side. You felt bad about how you reacted. I'm still a little bit Where did you graduate?
Okay. How, first of all, were you able, just thumbs up, thumbs down, because we've got some time constraints here. Was that easy? Was that easy? Was it hard? In the middle? Were you surprised by the experience? Or are you surprised by your response? Okay, here's some questions. Just thinking in your own...
Wait. You just press the button and you get like 90 slides. Yeah, we got the closure. We're done.
How did that happen?
No, because you press button.
It's like a fast forward button or something.
Oh, okay, sorry about that. Okay, so, just listen for a minute and think through your own process. How did you listen? Did you want in your mind, or could you not control yourself, and you did, make a connection?
Oh, absolutely.
Okay. Just in your own mind. How? Just reflect on your own process. I'm going to ask questions that you're just in your mind reflecting on. Okay. How did you listen? Did you listen to make a connection? Did you want to fix something? Did you listen and want to fix it? Did you want to ask clarifying questions? Was this process uncomfortable to listen? Was it comfortable? What was your body language? What was their body language in each role? Okay, talk out loud a little bit about that. And perhaps in this moment you can talk very much about it, but what I would also say is think about in the future, how does that impact the way in which you listen? I'm sorry, go ahead.
I was going to say, the fact that you gave us the instructions
Yeah.
made us very cognizant of what we needed to do. So I took those words and I said, just do it. And my first instinct is, sure, I know exactly her hand motions or what, and I said to myself in my brain, no emotion, no facial expressions, just more than 100% listen to that story.
Did you see things or hear things you might not have heard or seen as a result of really focusing on this kind of listening?
For me, to listen to Ronnie, no.
Because you know her so well.
Maybe that's why. Maybe if it was with somebody else, it would have been different,
Yeah.
but I was totally in tune to listening to every word she said.
Mhm.
And when I said it back, I think I missed a little component, a little bit.
Okay, other thoughts? Cindy?
Well, I think we both felt that it was very hard not to react to what we were saying. I mean, I think we don't know each other, although we just found out something that there are bunches that we have in common, but I think that without realizing it, we both talked about something that resonated for each other in a way, so it was I think we both felt it was very hard not to react. But I know that, so I guess it was easy for me to listen to your story, so I was really trying to think about how I was going to remember key points along the way. So that was kind of what I focused on, and not reacting, and really wanting to ask some questions about it afterwards.
Other thoughts? Yeah.
I also found it very hard not to react, because it's not the way I usually listen, and so I'm learning that I learned that in order to be a good listener, it is very important not to bring my own agenda to the table.
That's a really important point, because when I was going through this coaching certification program, we were videotaped, and my first feedback was that I had this bubble head when I was listening. And I thought that's so important to know, because I want to affirm the storyteller, but at the same time, do I need to do it in that way? It's too much gesture on my part. And then I began to realize that perhaps, as Beth was saying, yes, was saying that we have such power in influencing what's being said, especially in our role of leader, is that someone's sharing something to us, and our gestures can shape the way in which a story is told or not. So our response as a listener is equally as powerful as one storyteller.
You also had to be very much in the present, not have anything else in your mind, because you had to focus on what the person was saying so that you could repeat it back. So whatever daydreaming or problems or what have you, completely had to leave.
And so think about yourself in that role. Are we doing a couple of things at the same time? Does this particular conversation warrant full on eye contact and still body? Does it require, let's sit down and talk about this. I really want to hear what you have to say. Is it, okay, I've got what you are saying. Is the proximity of body language? I mean, there's so much involved in the way in which we listen. I had a meeting with a boss who looked at his watch almost every 10 minutes. Do you know what that told me? I was so not important.
Right.
Yeah, there's a lot of.
Are you saying this is how we should listen?
No, this is an actual
An
extreme
extreme of the listen.
example of all that's involved in the process of listening.
So would you suggest perhaps, what do you feel about taking notes as the person is talking so that you remember salient points you might want to share after?
Well, I think it depends on the content of the conversation. Realistically, most of your conversations you're not going to have a pad with you, or you're not really going to be. It perhaps it's just logistics. And but like, for instance, the goal setting. I'm going to take notes. This is really important what we say here. I want to remember this. That's your discretion. I would not become the avid note taker during conversations. I think that is it's a distraction. That really, what does this person want to share with me right now? It's casual. They just want to tell. It's a joyful, informal moment. Is this a more formal moment that Lauren's sitting down and spending some time? Okay, talk to me. I'm really happy you came in. Let's share. That moment, I'm listening. You ultimately, whatever the circumstances are, you want your staff to believe that you really listen. And that would be conveyed in so many ways, whether your actions model whatever was said, your response conveys that you actually picked up salient details. You're not going to remember everything. Look at the content in just 2.5 minutes. but what are the salient details? I mean, where did that face light up that you know you've got to go back to? Where did suddenly the concern come in? That's what I'm listening for. Half the time, if not 75% of the time, it's the subtext. It's what's not said. And they're swimming around in something up here, and you're like, I'm listening enough to know perhaps it's something that's not even being discussed yet. Yeah.
So like with the physical affirmations, like I noticed like that was really difficult for me to not do the bobble heading. I do a lot of that too. And do you recommend not doing that? I mean, I think that sometimes people sort of look for that to see that you're listening and that you're following their points. I think not to do this.
It's entirely personal, it's stylistic. All I'd say is be aware, video your tape, so, or have someone observe you if you don't know. Like when I am listening now, I really try to control this. At the same time, I want to affirm that I am engaged with you and that I really care about what you're saying. So how can I do that? You know, is it my posturing? Is it a slight smile? Is it a warmth? Is it the way I respond? So just be aware of how you listen. Are you approachable? Do you listen as though you have an open mind? What do you give back? When do you give back? Here are the questions. Do you try to make a connection right away? Likely the person doesn't necessarily, your staff, want you to make a connection. They might. Most of the time, people just want to be heard. They just want to be heard. Give the space to say what you've got to say. I care, I hear. Okay, let's think about whatever the response is. 1 minute. Do you try to fix it in the moment? Which is a real habit in the world of education and teachers. Is that really going to take care of it, to fix it? Sure. The light's out, electricity problem, functional stuff, short fix. You need to fix an emotion right then and there? No. But by listening to the emotion, that's getting closer to helping it move forward. So the fixing. Do you disagree? Sure. If you disagree, how are you going to share that? And when? You give them time to share out and then begin to build. Let me think more about what was just said. My children always say to me, when you say that, Mom, that means no. I'm like, you're so right. Like, no, actually, I won't consider it, but I think I know what you said. Do you want to ask clarifying questions? Usually, you want to be as clear as you can around a conversation that has some stuff to it. Yeah.
You mentioned, and I think it's so true, the location piece. Like I could sit behind my desk, or I could walk around my desk, and there are two great couches. And I'm very cognizant of where I want to sit when I'm having whatever conversation is. Sometimes, you want to be over there, and it makes it a little less formal, and it doesn't set up that hierarchy. But sometimes I kind of want that hierarchy, and I stay at my desk.
Discretion.
Setting is really important.
What is this warrant? What am I hearing? Tone of voice is really important. Okay, I sense that we're going to need to come together, sit down, and discuss. Or this one's quick, I can continue to type. But does your office space provide opportunity for those different kinds of conversations? Yeah.
Is it okay to ask clarifying? I mean, you said
Absolutely.
clarifying questions, so
No.
I sometimes have to stop and I say, excuse me, I don't mean to interrupt, but I just have to clarify. Is that okay?
Yeah. Tell me more about, on the backside, tell me more about that part. I'm not sure I fully understand. I want to make sure I do. Or in the moment, can we just hit pause for a minute? Is that okay? Because I'm not sure right
Because sometimes I
now.
feel like I'm stopping them, but I need to because I just,
So you
have to
just,
clarify. Okay.
can we hit pause for a minute? Who's they?
Okay.
Oh, you mean the teachers, not the children. Okay. Yeah, because otherwise,
Yeah.
if it's a key clarification, yeah. Okay, we're going to move forward a little bit. Things to consider when planning meetings and the role that you play. So this active listening. If you model this active listening, there's a good chance that your team is going to begin to do the same. You talk out loud about the active listening. You do this exercise with them. The power of that. And that's a norm here. and you do it early on, then that, to me, says you really believe this is important. And this is a way of being together. This is a mindset. You could frame it as, this is really important for you in the classroom. How are you listening to the children? That's always the safest place to go. And though, that actually is exactly how we need to listen to each other here in these meetings. And that's our norm. I have full confidence we are going to evolve into great listeners. Whatever place you are on the continuum. Your agenda setting we'll talk about later, but make it relevant, make it timely. Don't let it go into places you didn't intend to go. What you want, because time is currency, you don't have a lot of time for meetings, but when you get everybody together, every minute is so precious. So how do you maximize on that? You are in charge of those meetings for the most part. You are in charge of making certain it stays on task. That is your lovely role.
I have to say that Betsy must say time is your currency like a million times. And it's just so stuck in my head that I actually, when I gave the graduation speech to the parents, that phrase, I gave them that phrase because that just sticks in my head all the time.
Yeah, and time is fleeting for parents too.
Yes.
But it is, and when you get everyone together, why in your mind are you bringing them together? And if you don't have a reason, don't have a meeting. Just because it's on the calendar, figure out how else to use their time well. Because then they will begin to realize, this is of value for me. And I play a role in this. And ultimately, over time, you're going to get everybody engaged in those meetings, but you still need to make certain that it has a flow and that it is relevant to them. And if you can take off all of the logistics and put it in an email or manage that in a separate meeting, you're doing yourself a huge favor. If you want to have these deep conversations around practice, you cannot typically mix the two. And those details and logistics are a really comfortable place to stay for teachers. And they complain endlessly about them, but it's easier because you just get told this is how it's going to be and this is how, at this time, and logistics. But if you want to move into your practice and talking about the goal, the cycle, intentional learning, you're at a whole other level of discussion. So my suggestion, if you have the luxury to take those and separate them, I used to try to do those in emails or in person as much as I could. I could not stand the nuts and bolts, I call them. So they're important, you've got to do them, but how? So think about how you structure your meetings. Perhaps if you can't find another way and you have 2 meetings a month, maybe you have them, do you have them weekly? Hopefully. Let's say you have them weekly. That's great. A weekly full team meeting is great. I might alternate and do 1 week of the detail, and that would be a shorter meeting because who could sit for an hour and a half about that or whatever hour? What are your meetings typically? It's a long time for details. Or I don't know. That's where we can think about agenda setting. But don't let them bleed into the other because it's just a different kind of thinking, different side of the brain that influences the level of participation and the depth in which you can go. Location. Think about where you're holding your meetings. Are they always in the same place? Is it a neutral space where everyone feels part of it? Is it inside classrooms? Does that affect the conversation? Does it influence the conversation? Can you take it outside if you're talking about nature? If you're talking about, or if you want a certain feeling, where can you go with your meetings? How do they feel? Do they have personality? Do they have a personalization? Why would I be excited to come to a meeting? What would I want to see or taste or touch or hear? Do they enter when there's music? What of the environment can influence the way in which your meeting can feel interesting? You know, when you walk into a space and you're like, connect at some level with something sensory.
I think you're good at sort of creating that ambience. I don't know if anybody else does this, so I just have to say it. Sometimes I feel like it's so hard just for me to get the meeting agenda going and to think of all of these layers on top of it. It's
So
just
what
like
if
a
you
lot of work.
delegate? What if you talk about the importance of the environment? That you believe it adds to the value of the meeting. And you delegate, everybody take on a meeting. Bring something. Bring a flower. Bring a piece of food.
Bring the what?
A bad example.
Bring
chocolate.
So one of the, I think one of the benefits, or one of the nice things that is a result of our weekly staff meetings, is that it's the only time the whole staff gets together.
Yeah.
And it starts off social,
Yeah.
because there's always leftover food. They have
Yeah.
pizza in their room on Fridays, and so whatever pizza's left over, have a food sandwich. We have a nursing mom. We have people who have backaches, so they're lying on the floor. So the setting already speaks of a casualness that sometimes isn't representative of the importance of that meeting.
So I might say that you have that social and then you move into a more structured
And require
seating.
people, yeah,
Just even
the way you
this.
did this.
Just this. Could be.
Because that's
Sit
nice
up
and adds
and all come to the table.
So
So,
it's got, they're such different feelings.
Yeah.
Yes, it's great to see you, let's share a birthday cake, let's.
yes, absolutely, I would
And
say.
then you,
For sure. So now let's come this way. The expectation, it may be norms, up to you. Laptops, how do you feel about that? Somebody's laptop is open, there is a barrier between them and everybody else. 2 rows. Like one of my norms is everyone has a front row seat. This is front row seat back here, this is front row seat here. Because you know where you chose to sit in a lecture or in a conversation if you didn't feel like you want to participate. You were in the back, or you were near the door, right? So if you really believe everyone should participate, and you want active engagement, set up your environment so that it does so. I had a very small room that was dedicated only to faculty meetings, which was fantastic because the walls carried all of our conversations and thoughts from previous meetings. So there's a history of what we were doing for the year. Images of them, images of the children, all really, really about their practice. And the room was small enough, this one particular teacher always managed to wedge her chair behind everybody else. And so I'd always say, she'd know I was going to say, it's front row seat. That's no room. I go, yep, we'll make room. And we did not begin until
what about honoring
everyone.
the discomfort?
Okay,
If
yeah,
you will.
we're gonna do something after this that honors that. But you, in the beginning, if your norm, we didn't say full participation.
We didn't.
Equity
It was
sharing.
equity
A norm,
sharing.
okay, I might add, a participatory conversation. I don't know how you wanna say that, but your expectation is that everybody, equity, yeah, but full, participatory meetings. That I would, in the front end, even perhaps do something with Susan Keene's work on quiet. And that she's talking about introverts versus extroverts. But the value, and that's, you go right to the teaching of a child. The way that we perhaps make assumptions or think about quieter children doesn't mean, like we saw in that video yesterday, that they know any less. So that's us here in this room. And that not all of us are extroverts and are going to charge out our thoughts. Some of us need time. So we're going to norm so that everyone participates, there's equity in voice, but there's also a participatory environment. So how, as a group, do we need to honor everybody's style and respect that? And then you might brainstorm. Well, we need to allow space. There can be quiet. We don't have to have these dynamic meetings all the time necessarily. We need to leave space, and we need to make it safe and comfortable for every temperament in this room to participate. How do we do that? Together. I would do that with everybody. Or at the beginning you say it's really important this happened, and then you notice it's not happening. So let's just take some time in this particular meeting and talk about how to help this happen more, because I'm observing that it's not. And that's really important, because everybody in this room has important thoughts. Each of what you are thinking is really important that we hear. How can we make that comfortable with all of you right now? That's why it's important to me, not because of anything else that can be constructed, like that I don't want to hear from someone. It's that I value everything as you do, that we all have these thoughts, and together it's going to build out this idea that's going to move us forward. That's the underlying message. Say it out loud. The why.
Could you address, when you said everyone has a good thought, you said it before, and then it was a little grumbling over here, like, not all like yours.
That's what I just said, I was like, not.
How does one, can you give us something that you would say to something that is really a very bad idea? For whatever reason.
Or how,
Stickers on flower pots.
Stickers on flower pots.
no, Betsy, or how, if you really don't believe,
Yeah.
if you really don't believe what that teacher says, like you really deep down. don't-
So your role as leader is to try to understand from where that's coming
from.
and then see if you can't somehow move to the points of view closer to center.
Can I give an example? This might be a
Yeah.
little, okay.
Yeah.
We've taken to planning full school meetings together,
Yeah.
which sometimes presents the 20-minute meeting on soil as opposed to, right, which through this leadership we hope to overcome next year, right, and do it in smaller groups and have a small, well, whatever. While planning for a Tiberstadt celebration, the birthday of the trees, one of the activities that the classroom did last year was planting with children. That took about 30 seconds, so a child made, so when planning this activity, they said, oh, we'll put stickers on the flower pots, but we should plan another activity, because they finish so quickly, that we should have a second activity, as opposed to, well, that's just a stupid activity in my head, right? Find something more meaningful to begin with, don't do a bad activity. And all of us are rolling our eyes, except people who are recommending this.
Okay, you have to value that person's idea just for saying it. And then, and again, the configuration, I don't know the dynamics, I don't know necessarily exactly how and when, but what does need to be shared, and the better with everybody is, okay, what I'm thinking about with our effort on using natural materials, that perhaps stickers are not a material we use in this particular exercise or in this activity. And that we work to, our challenge would be how to use natural material. I mean, go with me if I'm off here, but I'm trying to first address, I feel there's an attitude around stickers, right? Stickers would not be
It
used.
was also
About a quick
it was like, oh,
It was,
we'll do
it
it.
1, 2, 3, we'll
it
plant
was
and
not
move on, I guess.
only let's put stickers on a flower pot, it was, we did this last year, so let's just do it again because we did it.
Okay.
So we're just gonna keep doing the same thing over and over, even though it didn't really work.
Okay, so there's a mindset around,
Meaningful, it didn't.
there's a mindset you can begin to indoctrinate around just because we have doesn't mean we will continue to do. In fact, on this journey, we're going to try to really reshape everything we do just slightly to make it interesting for us. Because otherwise, it gets so mundane. All right, so we've done this already. All right, your challenge, I'd say, everyone's challenge in this room is to do something slightly different than they did last year. And perhaps this experience, as you plan it, needs to be at least 5 minutes. Get together with each other and brainstorm ways in which you can make this experience meaningful and slightly different that lasts about 5 minutes, because we don't have time for a backup activity. This is the activity.
Do you find it advantageous? Sometimes when you hear the comment, whatever, I throw it back to the teachers and say, what do we think about that? In
No.
other words, not me.
You're
as a-
setting them up.
That's how the 20-minute
You're setting those teachers
conversation-
up.
And they're not gonna want
No, but
You
in
cannot.
other words, why do we always have to be the Wicked Witch of the West is my point.
Well,
Isn't it
But
more?
this is a
I'll tell you
judgment
why,
call.
Because they were
This
in
is
the
a
room, they
judgment.
wouldn't challenge, they didn't
Yeah.
want to challenge
No,
it.
yeah, they're not going to do that.
Well, it's not only that you don't want to challenge, but like, it's also not my job. It's not my job to say
It
like,
is
your
not-
idea is bad.
No, it's not your job.
Sorry, your idea is bad.
As leader, here's the deal. Wicked Witch of the West? No. It is a belief. If you can constantly go to the belief, the value, the goal, the mission, the cycle, whatever it
It's
is,
such a good thing, they
That
love
is
playing the
not-
sand, they love stickers, they did it before, it's such a good activity, I know
Great.
they're gonna love it.
that's so true. But in this case, we are focused on the natural material and the process of planting that's going to give the child a single experience for 5 minutes. Then you may shake with her afterwards.
Yes.
But this idea of why always us is a huge challenge in leadership. And first of all, it's not always your voice. Well, it is your voice. Often it should be less and less. It's really more about an ideal, or a vision, or a mission, or a principle, or about young children. And that's where it's not Ronnie saying again, da da da.
How about it's disrespecting the
It
child?
is. It's like I want to go back to our site or our project goal, honoring the child. In this case, I'm not feeling we're honoring the child in the way in which we could potentially. Place your goal, your vision everywhere. Place it. And then all you're doing is redirecting. But don't set your teachers up to comment on each other, especially when it's a bad idea. Or an unproductive idea. You'll have to think about how to move bad into another place.
I think another way, we kind of had this happen in our school this year with one teacher in particular, and one of the things that I finally said was, I talked about the parents and how we're trying to help parents understand what our goals are and what we're doing, that if we continue to send things home to the parents that are done in this way that, that we're giving the wrong message, that we're not, and then parents are going to expect something that is not what we are planning to try to, include them in and help them understand what their children are doing and that our goals are with the children. So I said that also, because I just felt that at a certain point there was just something happening that we kept saying, I finally did just say, we can't do this anymore.
So you can use parents, you can also use children. And say, let me just think through an experience for me as a child of 4 years old, 1 minute versus 5 minutes. In our effort to extend their experience and deepen the potential of the moment, I need 4 minutes to touch the soil, to look at other people, to water the soil, to look at the seeds under a magnifying glass, to put it in, to place it in a sunny window. That has more meaning for me than to drop a seed in soil and leave. Go to that.
Go to the what's it good for?
Honoring the child. How are we honoring the child in a 1 minute versus a 4 minute experience? And we all have them. We all have them. Okay, start on time, end on time. Mean what you say what you mean. Especially when it's about meetings. Okay, optimize communication. I mean, this could be a 2-day workshop. But just in this short slide, how are you messaging? Verbally, email, in person, by phone. What else? What are other ways we communicate? There's so many now.
WhatsApp, social media.
Social media, I don't know if on a professional environment you are.
I mean, I'm not, but people are.
Okay.
We've just been reached out to by another child's site that looks really good, and we're investigating.
Yes, that Roz.
Yeah,
Right. Are you kidding me? That Roz man?
Yeah, we'll talk about it later.
Okay.
Always fine.
So what I'm saying now mostly is how are you communicating with your teachers? Hopefully you're not communicating through social media when you want to convey there's a meeting tomorrow. Okay. If you are, this is a new thing, Dawn. Okay.
Some people definitely are.
But as a leader,
Yeah. Like
Really?
people I know, they're at their school, there's like a closed Facebook group, and like they'll post on it like tomorrow at the staff meeting, be prepared to, and there's like an
Okay.
agenda.
All right. Whatever your group is accustomed to. Make sure you're consistent, make sure it's effective. That's an assumption everyone checks this page. Make sure they do. Make sure everybody has it set up equity from the start, and be clear about how you communicate and the ways in which you communicate.
Do you feel the agenda should always be pre-given?
It's up to you, and it's up to, I would say, not always, but there are some good reasons why. Some people love to do it on the front end, and if that's what you do, always do it, or explain that they won't always get it on the front end. Sometimes they will, depending on content. Be transparent about how you're going to deliver an agenda. I was still pulling together things and making them come together the way I wanted, so I never did that in advance. If I knew there was some concern around a specific topic, or I needed to front-end a conversation with one or two or three, I did. Say, you know, we're talking about, certainly if someone was going to participate, they knew in advance, and we're ready. Okay, we've talked a lot about norms. Be transparent, we're talking a lot about what you say up front, about your own process, your own thinking. There's great value when their teachers feel like they understand how you got to the place you arrived. Great value. An example around an early childhood group I was working with the world director, and I sat, of course, in admin meetings, and I saw assessment coming down our way. And we've done narratives, portfolio, and I knew there was a checklist coming our way.
For children or for teens?
For children, senior admin, we're talking, and I just knew we were gonna, and I feel like a buffer between the teachers and senior admin, but I saw a checklist coming our way. So I went to the team and I said, you know, we're gonna really talk about assessment. And my sense is that perhaps we might be asked to prepare a checklist, which I would like right now to tighten up our narrative and tighten up our portfolio process such that we can provide evidence for why a checklist isn't necessarily appropriate. Transparency. I would always front the meeting with our conversation today. Actually, here's the outcome. Not necessarily here's the outcome, but here's where I will make the decision. Do not bring people together and let them talk and know already that you are going to make a decision without their knowing, or you've already made it. There's tremendous credibility when that happens. So we're going to talk today about, because at the end of this meeting, I'm going to take all your information and actually make a decision. I'll let you know where I go with it. Or together by the end of this meeting, or at the end of this month, or at the end of this year, we need to come up with, and I really need your input. And that means you mean what you say. Trust is probably the numero uno, and how you do it is probably the most complicated. It's all about relationships. It's just all about relationships. The integrity, sincerity, reliability, consistency, commitment, the confidence from you to them, and the way you uphold that all together as a team. If you do anything at the front end, do this as best you can. And be transparent about this. Because your work really can't move in a way that it will when there's trust.
So those are beautiful words. Those are great, but do you have suggestion, and can you tell us some honed, wonderful ways to do that?
Well, we could brainstorm this, and I'm sure that this takes time, and all right, let's go to it. Integrity, we're touching on it. We're touching on it as we go without being asked direct, but the integrity of your work, the integrity of what you say, and why you say what you're saying. It's not about Ronnie, it's about our school, it's about all of us together, it's about children, honoring the child. There's integrity to the process in which you go. Are you fair? Are you consistent? That's really important. Sincerity, are you authentic? Do you mean what you say? Your behaviors and actions model all this. Are you reliable? Do you do what you say? Are you late to the meeting? Are you unprepared? Did you not do all of what you said you'd do? Can they count on you? Consistency, much the same. Can they expect you to do and say and behave the way that they think?
Is there inherent in the fact that you're the director, you're the boss, whatever it is, that there's an inherent lack of trust just because of your position? As much as you do all of this, at the end of the day, is there really genuine
Only
trust?
if you prove them wrong in these areas at some point. And temperaments are different. Maybe you only did it once, but still that's personal stuff from everybody. If it's consistent in a single area, But no, I don't think so. I think you have to work hard as a leader to gain trust. Once you gain it, you can sustain, you'll have it.
I think a big part of the trust piece too, like looking from the bottom up, it's always that transparency issue too. Like there are all of these things in transparency. Like one, the sign of someone who is in a leadership position who you like can inherently trust is someone who's like, look, this is the problem I've got right now. I'm dealing with it. I know it's a problem. I'm working on it, and like doesn't need to have all the answers all the time either. Like there's that humanness that we have to show with children too. Like I actually don't know the answer to that. I'm gonna look it up and get back to you on it. And I think sometimes there's like it's not a trust so much, but there's like this like that you don't have to have all the answers either. Like even though it's your school, there's answers that you might not know, and like just acknowledging like, you know what, guys, this is a mess, and I'm gonna figure it out.
This is interesting, and Brene Brown did a TED Talk on being vulnerable, just in the social work. And I was part of an opening retreat, admin retreat, and the boss showed us this video and said, you know, let's really think about how we're all vulnerable amongst each other. There was no way I was going to be vulnerable around this particular admin team. I'd be chewed up and spit out. So you need to use discretion, right? So you've got to be careful, but to your point, there is something important about you appearing human, but you cannot cross that line that suddenly suggests you don't know what you're doing. And that's really scary, right? So there's real discretion about knowing your people, knowing your team, knowing your temperaments, and it's a really gray space, but it's really important to know it. Like, how much can I afford to say in this moment? Like, I'm not going to go to that meeting and say to the team, you know what, so-and-so on the admin level is gunning for checklists, and we're in deep, right? I'm not going to go there. I'm going to say, I'm sensing that perhaps this might come our way. I know it's coming our way, but I'm thinking it's coming our way. My response is, we got to get ourselves tightened up down here. So let's do it, because then I got to go out there and go to bat for this, right? So there's transparency enough that hopefully you're feeling safe and slightly informed, but I don't think it's appropriate for you to know exactly who's doing this, right? So there's discretion involved in the way in which you share your information that you know, because you'll always know more information, as you should. And just lost the thought that I had.
You're human.
And you're human. And you always, I lost my thought, right? Rather than faking it right now and moving on. So it's, but there was something you said, I will come back to it. Yes?
What about, you know, not crossing the line? So you want to certainly appear human, but also not crossing the line in terms of being, you can't be friends with, you can have warm relationships, and hopefully you do with all, you can't be.
So this is another conversation which we're not going to go into because we don't have time, but it is something to think about. Sorry?
Should I put it in the parking lot?
You can put it in the parking lot. I'm not sure where to get to it, but what I say to you is think about what you mean. I've been in environments that say school is family. I don't use the word family because I think it's too confusing. Because I think there are different sets of expectations. We might be professionally and personally linked. What is that word for you? And then how do you uphold expectations around it? When you get too comfortable and too familial, you cannot do your work. Yeah.
Also speaking from the bottom up as a teacher, part of the trust is knowing that Randy has our back.
Yeah. How do you convey? You will gain tremendous trust if you can convey to your teachers you have their back. It doesn't mean they can slack.
No, I
You
think
just
what's,
be clear, have clear expectations around what you hope can happen with them.
you know, I
and
think
for
it's
them.
very much a two-way street. So in order for a director to
Absolutely.
have the trust in their staff and to have their back, the staff also has to kick a lot of things back to the director. You know, they have to communicate. So there's a lot, I think a lot of it is built on communication.
And it's a two-way street, absolutely.
And to Katie's point, and I'm not sure this is where I was going, but it did come back, is there's no harm in saying, you know, food for thought. Let me think on that. Don't have that answer for you right yet. Now, if you want to be perceived as consistent, you would get back to her to say, no, I've been thinking more about that. And actually, it's an interesting idea, we can't get to it. Or, blah, blah, blah. She feels valued, she feels heard. I didn't know at the time, I've thought more about it. That feels good, even if you don't have an answer, right?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Yes. Pressing comments right now. No? Sure? Commitment to is just put this together, competent. There's a little bit of fake it till you make it in a moment, right? But not for too long.
Could you say that one more time?
Fake it till you make it. Competency. I mean,
I like
you know,
that.
hopefully you're competent, you feel competent and capable. But there are moments where you're moving into a new space because we should, and we're challenging ourselves. And you know, I just moved into a new role, and you get into a new role, and you go, well, wait a minute, and then you go, no, wait a minute. There's 30 years behind me. I can just pull it together, and in the meantime, present myself as, right? You've got that. You've got that. We all have life experience, and we all have educational experience. As we take on something that's a bit new or challenging, just bring some confidence to the table, but do your homework behind the scenes. You know, back it up. Okay, so supporting active participation. These are things you're going to be thinking about. We're not going to go too deep in them, but they're very important. How are you going to do that? How are you going to do it? We're going to walk through these right now, just for a minute. Shared leadership. I mean, supporting active participation is just front row seats. Front row seats right here. All of you are participating. Do you really feel like you can opt out? Right? But it's of value, we care. So it's worth my while. I would be transparent about that in the front and have that down here in norms. In this active participation, what does that mean? So perhaps your initial meetings consist a lot of deconstructing what these norms mean, and then reiterating the importance of them. So shared leadership, your voice isn't always the voice in the meeting. We'll talk about this when we build out agendas. You've got an idea, you want to talk about intentional language as a cycle?